Yo, peace, 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 love and blessings. Peace, love and blessings. Yo, check it out. I'm Mike Big Baby Brown. Um, there's certain people on my channel who've been following me throughout the years, man. I started my YouTube channel. Well, first of all, I'll start at the beginning when I started playing the guitar. My influences. Um, there was a point in time, let's say high school. I graduated high school in 2007. I was born in, well, okay. I graduated high school in 2007. And a few years went past after high school. My initial love in life was football. Football was my fucking life. I don't know, I was damn good at it. You know what I mean? But when it comes to this music, when it comes to the blues and folk music and acoustic music, it all stemmed back to my grandfather. His name was Ted Brown. T like Tom, E like egg, D as in David, Brown, the color brown with the E at the end. Google him, look him up. He has a tremendous story. He was a big time folk musician in the 50s and 60s in America. He was killed in 1968 during the riots. Now, the story goes it was an act of random violence. And the guy that killed him was a hitman. You know what I'm saying? Now, this is the story. The hitman that killed my grandfather. I think the kid at that time in '68 was like 16 or 17 years old. Maybe he was no older than 18. Maybe 20. Between 15 and 20. He was a very young guy. And this is the story. My grandfather was leaving a meeting that he had with his fucking lawyer. He had just signed a deal. He was looking to tour in Europe, and he had a following in Europe. And now, for those of you who don't know about my grandfather Ted Brown, he was a big deal back in those days. He performed at President Lyndon Johnson's inaugurational ball, and no matter what day and age it is, whether it's the fucking 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, up till now, in the fucking a whole new decade in this new millennium. We're in the 2020s. Any entertainer that performs at a president's inaugurational balls has to have some chops. So, you know, that was the LBJ album. My grandfather recorded 7 albums. He performed on Mike Douglas' show, um, uh, Jack Parr, and back in those days, it was very rare that you had black entertainers. Now, you did have black entertainers on there. Like, for example, my grandfather was on tour with Dick Gregory, a prominent African American comedian. Google him. Google him as well. If you don't know anything about Dick Gregory, look him up. He's one of the greatest comedians that ever lived. And my grandfather was on tour with them. They were really good friends. And Dick Gregory was actually the first African American to sit on the couch and have an interview on national TV. It's either Jack Parr's show or Mike Douglas show. Either or. I'm sorry, I can't remember right now. But both of those are huge nationally televised programs. And back in that day, you had a few channels. You know what I mean? You had CBS, you had NBC, or CBS, ABC, and Fox. You know what I mean? It was only 3 or 4 channels. We're talking the '60s. You know what I mean? And at that point, back in that time, if you compare, like in today's time, um, Dick Gregory was like a Cat Williams of today's standards. You know what I mean? When it comes to African American comedy, he was like a Bernie Mac. He was like a Dave Chappelle, who's big time. Even till he passed away a few years ago. But even in his elder age, he was still held in high esteem in comedy in Black America. But anyway, my grandfather was on tour with him, and it was an episode that fucking one of the first African Americans on national TV at that time, when it was only a limited amount of networks, prime time back in that day. And my grandfather performed, and he was on his way up, and he was killed. Now, when it comes to me personally, like all this thing, the whole guitar thing and the music thing, it came natural to me. I didn't start playing. I'm 33 years old. I was born November 3rd, 1987. I didn't start playing guitar until Christmas Eve of 2010, and I caught an interest, and I got upset with the music of today's, like, popular culture in Black America. Let's just be honest. You know, I was I came up in the gospel choir, you know, as a very young child. So music has always been in my life, even on my mom's side. My grandfather was a great reverend in the city of Cleveland, Ohio. His name was Edward Thompson, and um, I came up in the choir, so music has always been a part of me. And when you mix that in with sports, I was always used to being on the big stage. I was always used to being in front of a lot of people, performing in front of a lot of people, whether it's on in the athletic arena or music. Since I can remember, I started playing football when I was 7 years old. I was singing in the choir in front of huge crowds, you know, as long as I can remember. But I remember when I was a child, I wanted to play guitar, and I remember holding my grandfather's guitar in my hands. The same guitar he played on all of his gigs and everything. I remember holding that guitar, and I can't really recall what happened to that guitar. Maybe we'll get into that in future videos. You know what I mean? But anyway, it came natural. So I got a guitar for Christmas. My uncle bought me a guitar. You know, he saw that I took an interest to it, and I watched videos on YouTube, and I started studying the blues and folk music because it was one day I was kicking it with my boys. I was in the hood, kicking with my boys like any other day, and one of my homies was a fan of Jimi Hendrix. So I heard this Jimi Hendrix song for the first time. I think it was Little Wing, and it blew me away. And oh my God, I just started doing research on Jimi Hendrix, listening to Jimi Hendrix music. I wanted to figure out who Jimi Hendrix influences were, and it was Buddy Guy, B.B. King, Muddy Waters. So I started listening to those guys. So I started doing research and studying those guys' music and their story and their influences, and then I figure out their influences: Son House, Robert Johnson, um, um, Bucka White, and all of these guys, man. And I just got engulfed in the blues culture to the point where I became a student of the blues. But it all came natural to me. And Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2010 is when I first seriously had a guitar. My first guitar, and I started playing in December, January. 5 months later, it was like April, May, in that time. And I had learned so much stuff and studied so much stuff with the blues, and I learned a few scales. And next thing I know, my same uncle, who was in charge of our family band, we had a little, we had a choir coming up. You know what I'm saying? We were big time in the early mid '90s in Cleveland, Ohio. They called us the Thompson Singers. We were big time back then. Well, not big time. We weren't fucking celebrities or anything, but we, on the gospel circuit, on the Chitlin circuit of gospel in the city of Cleveland. We're well known in that time. And my uncle, he said, okay, why don't you come to church and play with me? So we started rehearsing before the whole week. Before that time, he was surprised because he was the one that bought me the guitar. At that point, I was in my 20s. I might have been 23, 24 at that point. I don't fucking remember how old I was, but I was a young guy, and he was surprised how quick I picked it up without any form of music lessons. Because remember, I never studied music. All I knew was what was in me. I listened to my grandfather's music my whole life. I was in a gospel choir coming up as a kid, and I steered away from music because I got into football. You know what I'm saying? And you know, it was amazing, man. Like I picked it up quick, so I started playing in a church circuit, if you want to call it the Chitlin circuit. But I started playing in the church circuit. I played with my uncle, and we played, in different churches around Ohio. And I wasn't never too much a religious guy, so to speak, as an adult. But we're not going to go too far into my beliefs or anything. But I love gospel music because gospel music and the blues coincide with each other. But I just picked it up from there, And at that point, when I first started playing, it was all electric, It was all rockabilly, the electric style. I didn't really get into the folk finger picking. No, I wasn't finger picking back then. But a couple years went. Well, not really a couple years. Some time went past, and I started getting into Robert Johnson and Big Joe Williams and Lightning Hopkins and all of these guys, Jesse Fuller, and oh my God, Blind Willie McTell, and all these guys, Reverend, God, it's too many names, man. But I got into the finger picking style, and I started picking that up and studying that, and but I never really took it serious to the point to where, I'd like to play. I played publicly several times, in Cleveland. Um, Played a couple of shows, a couple of dives and everything, open mics, and then I perform at an open mic at a bar or a little club and everything, and they'll invite me to a gig. And then, I got married, and I didn't get into it, so my posts weren't consistent, but I love the blues, man. I love the blues. And if anybody has any like tips on how I can improve, or how I can like take it to another level to where I can perform publicly and try to make it, and it's not really about the money, I don't, I'm a, like, this is the 21st century, it's 2021. You know what I mean? I'm a real life blues man, like my story is incredible, and we'll go into that in future things, but the blues is something that's in me, and I can't get it out of me. I can't get rid of it. You know what I mean? I can't get rid of it. It's something that's gonna be a part of me till the day I die, and I just want to get better and keep studying and keep improving my music. Most of the songs that I perform are originals. Now I do covers, but when I do covers, I kind of put my spin on it. You know what I'm saying? I don't I don't like copying somebody note for note, lick for lick. That's not really my thing. It comes from straight from the soul, like soul food. You know what I'm saying? There's no ingredients. There's no a cup of this, a half a cup of that, a teaspoon of that. No, it's from the soul. It's from the spirit. I put a dash of this, put dash of that, taste it, dash of that, and then you get the end result. That's what it's. That's what the blues is, man. That's what soul music is. That's just what it is. You think about the greats musicians like James.